Welcome to the AI Ireland podcast, your window into the world of AI innovation on the island of Ireland. Join us as we explore how AI is harnessed to tackle both business and societal challenges, revealing the cutting-edge solutions emerging from this vibrant AI community. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates and insights in the world of AI. Hello everyone, it's Mark Kelly here. I hope you're doing really well. In the run-up to the AI Awards, I'm very happy to be speaking to Jennifer Geraghty Ryan. Jennifer is Principal Product Manager at AI Agents and Copilot Studio. So we are talking about, in my mind, the most exciting thing in the world of AI agents. We've got Copilot. You're just back from London. If anybody hasn't seen the keynote from Satya, they have to see it because it was immense. Tell me a little bit about the work that you do currently in Copilot and AI agents. But before you do that, tell me about your journey, how you got the job.
So I've been at Microsoft since 2022. I was part of a small team working on new supply chain products. And then in August last year, a group of us, about 30 of us, were pulled into an AI moonshot project. And we were told to go and figure out what is just now possible with AI and experiment. And we built an agent. It was this kind of an agent that would help customer success teams manage customer interactions. We realized that this is something that like a lot of our customers are going to be needing to do. So to make that transition from, using Copilot as kind of your helper in your day-to-day, triggering when you send it a chat message, to move over to kind of this more agentic piece. So this would be like a Copilot that is triggered by a data change in a downstream system. So we realized that our customers would need that. And we went over to Copilot Studio, which is Microsoft's platform for building and extending your custom Copilots. And we added our agent functionalities in there. So this created a platform that any company who uses Copilot Studio could use to build their own agents. We've been working on that this year. In May, we announced going into private preview. So Satya announced that as the keynote at our Microsoft Build conference. Since then, I've been running the early access program for Copilot agents. So working with our earliest customers that are using the agentic capabilities in Copilot Studio, working really closely with them to build their first few agents. And then last week at the AI Day, the AI Tour in London, Satya announced that we would be going public preview with agents in Copilot Studio in November. So that was really exciting. We announced a lot of the customers that we've worked with there. So Pets at Home built an agent that helps look at potential fraud. McKinsey built an agent that helps intake new customer engagements. And there were a lot of other customers announced there that I worked with directly. So that was very exciting.
I can only imagine. And by the way, I should have started the podcast with saying that Jennifer is up for AI Person of the Year as a finalist. So well done to you, firstly, which is really exciting. It must be kind of surreal, almost looking down on yourself when you're in London, CEO of Microsoft's talking about you and your colleagues' work. They're showcasing it as kind of bleeding edge. You have people staying up all night, ready for the video to come live and streaming. Like, it's so impactful because it's truly at scale globally, right? So it's impacted there. So having that feeling of meaningful work, I'm sure that box is being ticked, right?
Yeah, I think that's the most exciting thing about working at Microsoft right now is the potential for so many people to use your work. And then in addition to that, being the platform for agents at Microsoft. So every internal agent at Microsoft is built on the Copilot Studio platform. Any customers that want to extend their Copilots will be using Copilot Studio too. So yeah, it's a little bit surreal. And obviously, there's a huge amount of people that work on this. It's not just me or my team. There are lots of different teams at Microsoft working on it. But yeah, it was definitely very exciting.
What's really nice is, and I was in Microsoft, was it 2 weeks ago now for kind of Copilot tour, and we were doing the panel session. And for a lot of people, they're like, oh, the best stuff happens in California, the West Coast of the US, la 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 la. But then one from you got an Irish perspective, you're hearing that story, and then you've just obviously seen the announcement, like, I don't know, 30 minutes ago about Microsoft having 550 jobs in AI and cyber in Ireland. It's kind of really exciting to say, well, actually, you're doing really good work locally. You're having a kind of a presence here, that's having an impact and making waves, which for me is just so exciting to say, well, actually, if you stay here, there's a story here to be told, and you can actually play a part. From a customer engagement, how do you start to work on the right problems? Because from the 7 years that I've been working in the world of AI, there's a graveyard of wouldn't it be cool snare projects
Yeah.
that have got a significant amount of money invested, management buy-in, and they're either really well solved and the business says, and that added no value whatsoever, and then the kind of morale drops, or they just don't move the dial, or they're just a complete failure, which maybe you're actually better off having a failure rather than a that did nothing for me, right? So how do you kind of do that problem definition rather than work on that shiny toy that you think could be cool?
I think that was something that was really, really important for us when we were looking at the early access program and identifying like which customers to work with. So the way that I approached that was we would start with kind of like a workshop with the customer, and we'd focus on number one is like, what are the priorities for your business? Like, what things are like really, really important for you right now? We'd also look at like what problems are a really good fit for being solved by this new generative AI functionality. So AI has been around for a long time, obviously, and lots of different types of it. The one that we were really interested in is this new kind of generative AI, and things like summarizing large amounts of data, like dealing with ambiguity. The orchestrator in Copilot agents is able to look at all of the actions that it has available to it and figure out, okay, do I have all of the inputs that I need to perform this action? So anywhere where there's a little bit of like judgment needed, like what thing to do, anywhere where there's kind of like a complex problem, the agents will kind of figure out at runtime what to do. So looking at like, okay, what problems are important, which ones are like a good fit for solving with AI. That like really helped us to focus on, what might be a success. And then also obviously a lot of these, we're working with these customers to figure out like, is this platform ready to go public preview? Like what kind of things do we need to fix, or if there's any other functionality that we need to be ready. But another part of it was like being able to show the practical impact of this new technology. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to tell a good story around the return on investment in these agents. So that's kind of how we looked at it. And it starts with having the right people in the room that understand the business, and also people that understand the possibilities of generative AI.
Was there any challenges that surprised you that you didn't, that maybe you had an assumption this is where it was going to play out, and actually the challenge that arose was different than expected?
So I will say like there were some use cases that I thought we'd need to do a lot of like custom prompt engineering for, that the tool just kind of like blew us away out of the box. So one of those was Thomson Reuters had a due diligence use case. This is like when a company is performing an acquisition and they get a bunch of documents about the company that they're acquiring, and things like lease agreements and the contracts of their staff. And we built an agent that looks over that data and does kind of a due diligence check, like writes a document saying, here are the things to look for. So one example could be if there was like a building lease and it was in an area that is prone to wildfires, you should have some kind of fire insurance. And this is something that lawyers kind of do spot checks on today. So we just kind of like threw all that into an agent, and we were trialing the O1, like the new GPT model. We didn't do any kind of custom prompting. We just kind of we gave all the documents to the agent and said, write a due diligence report just to see what would happen. And the output was really, really good. And we hadn't done any fine tuning. We're using an out of the box model. We hadn't written any specific prompts. So I think that really, really surprised us. So I think some of the things we weren't sure it would be good at, it was really, really good at. And then there was other things where it actually was a little bit harder than we thought it would be to get the agent to do what we wanted it to do.
On the hallucinations and trying to figure that out, how do you work through that? What are the assumptions that you're coming to the table with of what a good outcome is going to be? And then how do you communicate that back to the end user?
Yeah, so something that's really important to us is making sure that it's clear which parts come from the AI itself and which parts are grounded in some kind of reference material. So whenever an agent uses something from the knowledge base, there's a citation provided to the end user so that they can understand, okay, this is where this information came from, and they have some way to check it. We also were really, something that we really wanted to make sure was that the maker, like the person that created the Copilot agent, had a lot of transparency into what was happening. So we've added in a new view on the activity of the agent where the maker can see at every turn what the reasoning was behind the scenes. So we have like a prompt that outputs like this was the reasoning. So if the agent chooses, if the orchestrator at runtime chooses a specific action and uses specific inputs, it will also put out like, okay, I need an email address to use this action, and the user had provided an email address earlier. So the maker has a lot of transparency, not just into exactly which actions are being called and which inputs and outputs are on each action, but also into the kind of like reasoning behind why it used them. So that gives the maker like that kind of human oversight over
Yeah.
the activities of the agent. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and then having that kind of golden thread is probably really liberating for you because you kind of always know, well, this is the kind of the ethical AI of how we're using it. This is the transparency. This is the kind of your kind of your maze sort of, because you always find back to what your North Star was. And then if you've got any questions around that, you can always show how you've kind of come about it. When you mentioned there were some kind of surprising challenges, or maybe things are a little bit more difficult to overcome than first expected, is there anything that kind of stands out, or is it more user case specific?
Some of it is user case specific, but I think one thing that I've found really interesting is like I think just as a PM that has been a PM of a lot of software products, like something very different about working with AI is this kind of like non-deterministic nature. So when you think of like the wider impact of that, maybe I don't know if you're if the people listening work on software products, but unit testing is really important. So having some kind of, or not just unit testing, but all kinds of different tests. So we would have things like, you know, if you enter your username and password, then you're successfully logged into the system. That gets really tough with agents because the output is non-deterministic. It's not going to be, by its nature, it's not going to be the exact same every time. So you start to think about like, okay, well, how would we test this? And there's a combination of answers. We might have some like expected actions that it would take, or we could have another agent evaluating the output of the agent. But that was something that was really interesting and that I hadn't initially. It's not the first thing you think about when you're starting to develop something like this, but you get into all those
Yeah,
questions and
yeah.
yeah,
It's funny because a lot of people will expect that. And then actually when they start to see how it's different, and then it's also learning and adapting,
yeah,
yeah, it's great. So I always think of COVID, and suddenly people were using Microsoft. They were using kind of Teams, and I was like, it was a go-to. But then people start to get into a comfort zone, and they're like, well, actually, you know what? I'm actually grand the way I are. I don't really need to use some of these tools. I'm actually okay. But when they start to see some of the productivity advantages, you can just see how much more productive they are and how much more kind of focused around the end result, but getting there in a kind of this kind of augmented kind of way,
yeah.
even for brainstorming, coming up with ideas. It really does feel like a new way of working that if you once you've started it, it's kind of like driving an automatic. You're reluctant to go back to driving manually.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think a good example is I don't know if you have access to the recap in Microsoft Teams yet, but
Yeah.
when you record a Teams meeting, I used to spend a lot of time like kind of going back if I missed, especially because half of our team is in Seattle, so sometimes there'll be meetings that I can't make during the evening time. I'll have to go back over the recording. I don't need to do that anymore. The recap functionality summarizes what happened in the meeting, what the action items were. It lets me know if my name was mentioned and the timestamp and what I was mentioned for, and I can ask Copilot questions about the meeting. So that's really, really helpful. And I think we need to bring people along, like as product managers and people that work in technology. You can't just expect people to completely change their workflow. You have to kind of meet users where they are and show them like, here's the most useful piece, and like put it into the context that they're used to. I think the direction that we are going is that the agents become the new kind of UI for applications. So I think a lot of people are going to start using the agents as like the way that they use technology. So you'll be kind of conversing with an agent, and it's not just, we're kind of going beyond chat. It's not going to be just text in, text out. It's also going to be UI elements out and pictures and video and chat in. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how software evolves.
One of the things that I came away from the Copilot discussion that blew my mind, that I probably was surprised at, was, and I'm again, my day job is staffing, was how you've now got managers who do not want to manage people, but their sweet spot's going to be managing agents. And so you not only you have your usual, you go down and you kind of, you go to your management route, maybe you go down to your principal route, or maybe you stay put. But now it's like, well, I'm going to manage agents, and I'm an agent manager rather than a people manager, or I'm an agent and people manager, and what my career trajectory is going to look like.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think everybody is going to end up being a manager of agents, because you want that human oversight. The agent isn't able to handle like 100% of tasks, so they're going to need to escalate to somebody. Somebody is going to need to teach them, monitor them. I think what we're going to see is like maybe 80% of the tasks being automatically handled by the agent, and then that additional 20% is where the kind of human comes in. I haven't really thought about somebody managing a mixture of agents and humans. I guess that's an interesting one. I don't know if you'd be managing them in the same way. I think it looks different.
Yeah, 100%. But I just think this is going to become a thing in the next 12 months or so. I could talk about this all day. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been listening to the AI Ireland podcast, and I've been speaking to Jennifer Geraghty Ryan, and she is a principal product manager at Microsoft, working in the AI agents and Copilot Studio. And we've been talking a little bit about agentic AI and some of the applications. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more about the AI Awards on the 26th of November at the Marker Hotel, and I hope to see you there. Thank you very much for your time, Jennifer.
Thanks, Mark.
Membership of AI Ireland places your organisation at the centre of the fastest growing technology sector in the world today. As a member, you'll have access to our diverse and highly engaged professional community, which is committed to driving artificial intelligence forward in Ireland. Membership of AI Ireland is for any organisation employing data and analytics. We offer memberships to corporate, government and SME organisations. Interested to find out more? Contact Mark at AIawards.ie.